Welcome to Prime Sports, and the Black Stars claimed their second win in 11 games after a 1-0 victory over Nicaragua in the team's penultimate game before the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. A timely curled effort from Abdul Fattah Issahaku in the 35th minute was enough to seal the win in a game that saw the Black Stars fluff many goal-scoring opportunities and over there. So that's Otoado first win after that win against Central African Republic there. But joining us via Zoom to do some analysis of the game, particularly following Black Stars' loss to Brazil, is football coach and analyst Nana Kweku Ajiman over there. Kweku, if you can hear me, thanks so much for joining us. But that was a pretty improved performance after the loss against Brazil. Please, if you can unmute your Zoom, I think your speaker is muted.
My apologies about that.
All right,
good evening to you and all your viewers.
Thank you.
You were saying that's an improvement or something like to the words of that effect.
Yes. Do you think it was an improved performance from the Black Stars?
No, of course not. It was quite unimpressive, to be honest with you. We're talking about Nicaragua, they're ranked 139th on the FIFA World Ranking, and we're hovering around 60 or 62. It was unimpressive, to say the least. Very unimpressive, to say the least. I didn't see what was happening. I mean, for me, I believe that we should have demolished them in the same way that the Brazilians demolished us. So by the time it came to half-time, we should have been about 3-0 up. But we just couldn't do it. We couldn't cut it at all. I mean, this is probably a second-string side, and I think that this friendly against Nicaragua in particular is worse than what took place with Brazil. That was expected because you're talking about number one. We're talking about from playing the number one to jumping 130 odd places to play Nicaragua, and we couldn't get it together. We couldn't do anything in that match at all.
I mean, you talk about the fact that we couldn't get it together. I mean, in terms of specifics, what part of the game were you particularly impressed about, though?
Well, how many goals did we score? And how long did it take us to score those goals? I think this Nicaraguan game was basically exposed us, because this is a game that is supposed to help to build our confidence. This is a game that we should have walked away knowing that we thrashed the pants off Nicaragua with some solid play in all departments of the game, in all aspects of the game, and I don't think it did that at all. I don't think it will boost the confidence of these players that they're indeed ready for the World Cup. And I actually thank God that we weren't playing Switzerland this evening, because Switzerland would have tore us to shreds, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, yes, we've all been talking about Kudos, but to be perfectly honest, I mean, he's got to understand that he's playing as an individual within a team. He held on to the ball far too long, most of the time. And there was too much running with the ball. There was no slick passing and movement. I mean, I'm a supporter of Gideon Mensah, but every time he got the ball, he played it back. I don't know if he wasn't told that where the direction of the goal was. I was not impressed at all.
Yeah, but what do you think the problem is? Is it a case of the technical team being unable to diagnose what really the problem is? Or is it a case of the players possibly not being able to implement what the technical team is telling them to do?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, and I don't think I would say it was one or the other. I'd rather say that it's both. There's a challenge with the technical team, and there's a challenge with the team that they fielded at the end of the day. They just could not get it together. I'm being totally honest with you. I can't feel happy with that result at all. Okay, sure, not 6-0, 1-0, but let's have a good performance. For me, this was not a good performance by any stretch of the imagination, not at all. And then look what he did, 93rd minute or so, he brought on our local lad. You know, to do what?
Free Banya and Jordan Ayew.
Well, forget Jordan, because we know what Jordan
Yeah, Ifri
does.
Abania.
Yeah. You know, you bring him on in the 93rd minute. What is it you want him to do? What expression? What time is there for him to express himself on the field of play? I can't understand that at all. I can't understand that.
I mean, let's talk about, because the essence of the.
For me, I'll
Yeah, I'll say the essence of these two friendly, and
go on.
of
I'm
course,
listening.
yeah, I mean, the essence of these two friendlies, the one against Brazil and even the one against Nicaragua, and finally the one against Switzerland in November, is to prepare the Black Stars for the World Cup coming up in Qatar. I mean, do you think the Black Stars are particularly ready for the World Cup? Because other than that, it almost looks like it's going to be a mess in Qatar.
Well, not with this display, because it shows me straight away we don't have a second 11, do we? We don't have a second 11, basically, because this you could really say was our second 11. It's a no-show team. No show. I mean, they were all desperate to score a goal. Everyone was desperate to get themselves on the score sheet. And because of that, the tactical discipline and everything that was required was thrown out the window. Everybody wanted to get their name on the goal sheet, that they've scored a goal. And against Nicaragua too. And we couldn't do it.
I mean, finally, what do you think needs to be done, ahead of the World Cup?
Well, what can you do now? What is it you think we can do now? You've picked your squad. I mean, the only thing is that, the coach alluded to the fact that there was still room for another 30%, or he'd only pick 70%, or whatever, something in the region of that he said, which alluded to the fact that players who hadn't been called could still be called. I would say to him, you've got to look at Majid Ashimiro again. You maybe have to look at Alfred Duncan again. You definitely have to look at Joseph Painston again. There are several players out there that he's left out there, and I would suggest that these players need to be brought in. But look at it. You've got no time to assess anyone now, because even before you play the match against Sweden, we will all know we will all know what the squad is. So if you brought Joseph Painston in, if you bring Alfred Duncan in, if you bring those players that I think you should bring in, you can't test them anymore. It's the real deal. It's the real deal. We've run out of time for the test now. The Switzerland match is the beginning of the real deal. And that Switzerland match will also be crucial as a confidence booster, because the last thing you want is to go into a fixture just before the World Cup and lose 2-1, 3-1 or something like that, which is quite possible because Switzerland are ranked 16th on the FIFA rankings. They're ranked 16th. They beat Spain the other day by 2-0. And coming up to the World Cup on the 17th, they're definitely not going to be a pushover. We're ranked 62. Whoa, that's the friendly.
It's a tall order, definitely a tall order for the Black Stars ahead of the World Cup. Thank you so much, Nana Kwekwajiman, for your time, and thanks for the analysis there. But let's move on because the former Black Stars Management Committee Chairman Fred Papo has been speaking about the four-time African champions, and he tells Joy Sports Ghana will excel in Qatar if we get things right.
I think it's going to be an interesting World Cup. I believe and I hope we'll get our acts right. One, with the call-ups. Two, with the preparations. So far, seeing the friendly matches lined up, perfect. It couldn't have been any better. We have a friendly match opponent with a style or expected style similar to each and every single one. Nicaragua for Uruguay, Switzerland for Portugal, and then
we did Japan earlier too.
Yeah, we did Japan earlier. So I think it's quite okay with the preparations. And then my only hope and prayer is that we should have serenity in camp. We need serenity in camp. It should be devoid of all these acrimonious, this crisis here and there, shouting for bonuses or whatever it is. We must try and settle all as much as possible. And then even in the camp, itself, as much as possible, the team should be insulated from the physical presence and visitations of many other people. You know, they may wish well, they will wish their team well, but I think it's worth leaving the boys to be in their own space, at least for that period of time. I'm sure if we do that with our usual God on our side, we'll get a good run-up.
Well, Heart of Oak and Samuel Boadu have mutually parted ways after a poor start to the 2022-23 Betfair Ghana Premier League season. At the conclusion of a meeting with the board chairman, Togbe Afede, on Tuesday, former Midiama Gaffer said to have agreed to mutually part ways with the Rainbow Club. Boadu is said to have agreed to a mutual termination and step aside from the club as they seek to bounce back to their best. Let's get a reaction from the fans and Elvis Herman Hess, who's the chairman of the National Chapters Committee. He joins me via Zoom now to just get a reaction relative to what they think about that. We'll try and get him. We'll try and get him very briefly and get his reaction relative to how the fans feel about the sack, the mutual of Coach Samuel Boadu. All right, but let's just listen to Chairman of the National Chapters Committee of the Heart of Oak. He's been speaking, reacting to this very news.
It's not been easy, and let me state that the supporters at this moment are divided. If you follow most of our social media platforms, some are of the view that the management or the board took the right decision in allowing the coach to go. Others are of the view that the coach should have remained or should have been given extra more matches to play. So at the moment, the supporters are divided, but like I stated earlier, it's an emotional moment because Coach Samuel Boadu, made a difference after 10 years or after a decade, since the current majority shareholder, Togbe Afede, took over. He was the only coach that the supporters, started following because under Coach Boadu, we started winning trophies, and it was something that we were lacking for so many years.
All right. Now, have you had any interactions with Samuel Boadu yourself? I mean, following this decision?
I was able to interact with him earlier, but after the official release, I've not been able to get in touch with him because his lines are currently busy. Perhaps he would want to take a rest. It's a big club, and it could be that a lot of people are trying to reach him as well. But I've been speaking to him often, and like I said, I at least expected it, especially after the Kotoko match when we spoke. He was still happy.
Let's also talk about his demeanor in the last few days. I mean, the eventual determination of this decision is not something that was done, abruptly. I'm very sure that there was a chain of events that led to this. But what is your assessment of his body language, his thoughts, in the last few days that you saw him and interacted with him?
Yeah, he looks a bit worried. I must be very, very honest with you.
Well, that's Coach Samuel Boadu there, but referee Yao Selon Blaise came under criticism after Sunday's super clash between Asante Kotoko and Heart of Oak at the Barara Sports Stadium in Kumasi. The Porcupine Warriors have officially lodged a complaint against the match officials for the game, citing unfair officiating. Now, the big question is, what can be done to improve the performance of Ghanaian referees? And we are privileged to have on Zoom TRK Atifu, a former referee and now referees instructor. Sir, that's the big question. How do we improve refereeing in Ghana?
Yeah, good evening, viewers, and good evening to you, and thanks for the opportunity. First of all, a lot is being done from where I sit for the training and development of refereeing. Refereeing performance is something where it's like you sit in a class, you are taught, and you go out there, and your duty is to actually excel based on what you are taught. What we can do even though at least there is an opportunity, there are very good ones out there. The league is just started, and I believe there will be a lot to happen, where people will now be impressed that for the past 1 or 2 months that we've gone into refereeing training, where we ran from elite training to door training, which was just last weekend, I expect that the Salem one, even though I was not able to watch the game, is past and gone. But let's expect the best from them. But to enhance refereeing performance, it's a whole package. If I say a whole package, the FA, because I said we because we work hand in hand with the FA. The FA is going into a project called the Catch Them Young.
Yeah.
From the time I joined refereeing and exited after 20 years, there was what was recent was the Ben Kofi 5 years development plan.
Okay.
It started, and somewhere along the line, we never had anything. People came out of that group and also are referees currently. The Catch Them Young project has started. But so if you put the two together, we should be able to put up a policy document that dictates how referees can be developed and trained to hit the market level, the brand level, okay? Because if you ask me, currently, do we have a succession plan for the current referees that we have? If we have, what document do we have to that effect in the training and development of referees in terms of succession? Now, let me take the project that is ongoing that we see them do matches. Recently, there was a KGA tournament for them. Referees, these Catch Them Young, are not in Greater Accra, or they are not in the national capital. They are not in the regional capital. They are in the district capitals and the remotest areas within Ghana. Now, what is the structure of their development from the national level, regional level, to the district level? How visibility is the training processes? Who is disseminating the training programs? Where reporting structure, weekly reporting or monthly reporting structure? How do we marry the whole thing in terms of their schooling as well? Because most of them are schools.
So,
now,
referee, I mean, substantially, we need to pay attention to the training right from the beginning all the way to the top, right?
Exactly.
Great.
Instance,
but another very important point has to do with how the referees, whom we have today, are selected to, handle matches. Because for games like the Super Clash, for instance, referee Salom Yaobla is often regarded as a very senior referee, and other big matches. I mean, do you think there's a problem relative to how they are selected for some of these big games, for which reason almost every time there's a complaint that is lodged against their performance?
You see, what I had wanted to go to that area, but let's look at the age blocks of the current referees we have. For instance, if I tie this thing with the way our football is played, we have Colts, maybe Colts under 12, under 15, under 17. Then we have, if you tie that one with referees, because you cannot be under 17 and play under 20, or play under 23, or play Black Stars. These are all segregated groupings where people graduate gradually based on they had a particular rudimental training for under 15, under 20, so same it should be. You cannot put referee who is between the ages of 15 and 20, 15 and 20, and then 21 and 25, 26 and 30, 35, and put them under the same training program. You need to group them slowly, and they will graduate, and that is the succession. And like I said earlier, there must be a document to that effect, so that it is approved by Congress. Anybody who sits in the FA, regardless of whatever time, would still follow that thing in the training of. So you see that a referee who joined at the age of 15 knows that maybe in 10 years, this is where I would be. So if you want to take referee as even a pastime thing, he will make sure that he followed the rudiment training, and by the 10th year, he is there. Now, if you come to the current referees we have, the issue, like you mentioned, is the selection. How do we select them? Our refereeing is not only by fitness, but our current referee, from what I know and what is happening, is they only go annually to go and run fitness tests, and they are selected based on the results of the fitness test.
So that could be where the problem is, because they are not giving
and the question
training
is
as much as they should be given. You mentioned that they are giving training just annually, so just once a year, and all of that is adding up to the reason why we're having the challenges we are having in our training. Wow, fascinating stuff. We're definitely going to revisit this conversation, referee, there. And that's where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Prime Sports. We'll definitely have further conversation about refereeing in Ghana. Up next is PM Express, and Evans Mensah is here. Do stay. My name is Razak Musbau.